March 4th, 2014. Guadalajara, Mexico. A convoy of black SUVs tears through the city at 3 a.m. Inside the lead vehicle, a cartel lieutenant named Rodrigo El Contador Vasquez is reading a printed spreadsheet. His hands are shaking, not because of the police, not because of a rival gang, because of a number, one number, buried inside a column of transactions that doesn't add up. Someone has been watching them, mapping them, for 2 years. El Contador makes a call. Find the leak, he says. Find them now. 2,000 miles north, in a suburb of Albuquerque, New Mexico, a 44-year-old high school math teacher named Daniel Ortega is asleep in a house with a broken storm door and a 2009 Civic in the driveway. He has no badge, no gun, no government clearance. He has a whiteboard, a legal pad, and a mind that sees patterns in numbers the way most people see faces. And he has just become the most dangerous man in the Vasquez cartel's 2-decade history. Albuquerque, New Mexico, September 2011. Daniel Ortega didn't plan to destroy a drug empire. He planned to pass the time. He was 41, recently divorced, teaching AP statistics and calculus at Roosevelt High School in the South Valley, a neighborhood that had watched the drug trade consume 2 generations of its kids. Daniel knew the damage up close. His younger brother Marco had been recruited by a Vasquez street distributor at 16. By 22, Marco was in federal prison on trafficking charges. By 28, he was dead, an overdose that the family never fully believed was accidental. Daniel stayed, taught, graded papers, but the grief had curdled into something quieter and more dangerous than anger. Obsession. He started small. In his off hours, he pulled every publicly available DEA seizure report he could find. Court documents, asset forfeiture filings, federal indictments. The kind of documents anyone could access. The kind nobody bothered reading. To most people, they were noise. Bureaucratic debris. To Daniel, they were data. He started building a spreadsheet. Not on a classified government system. On a $400 Dell laptop at his kitchen table, between grading exams and eating cereal for dinner. His first column, seizure locations. His second, estimated street value. His third, the dates. He wasn't looking for anything specific yet. He was just cleaning data, the way a mathematician does before they understand what question they're asking. The question found him 3 months later. November 2011. It started with a coincidence that wasn't a coincidence. 3 separate DEA seizures, one in Phoenix, one in El Paso, one in Tucson, all occurred within the same 72-hour window. 6 months earlier. Same cities, same signature. He sat back in his chair. In statistics, a pattern that repeats twice as interesting, a pattern that repeats with predictable spacing as a system. Someone was running a distribution rotation, flooding multiple border corridors simultaneously, on a schedule, to overwhelm enforcement response. By the time agents in Phoenix called agents in El Paso, the bulk of the shipment had already passed through Tucson untouched. It was elegant, it was mathematical, and it had a rhythm. Daniel pulled 18 months of data, plotted every seizure on a timeline. The clusters appeared every 23 to 27 days, never exactly the same interval, but always within that window, deliberately irregular to avoid detection. He calculated the mean, the standard deviation. He built a predictive model on a statistics formula his AP students had learned in October. His model told him when the next rotation window would open, February 14th through 16th, 2012. He wrote it on a post-it note and stuck it to his monitor. Then he waited. On February 15th, 2012, DEA agents seized 340 kilograms of cocaine at a warehouse in South Tucson. The same day, a traffic stop in El Paso turned up 180 kilos packed into a modified fuel tank. Phoenix reported a third interdiction 11 hours later. Daniel stared at the post-it note. His hands weren't shaking. He was very, very still. He had just predicted a $40 million drug shipment from a kitchen table in Albuquerque. February 2012. Here's where most people would call the FBI. Daniel didn't. Not because he didn't trust them, because he'd watched what happened when you handed incomplete intelligence to an agency that moved on warrants and jurisdictions and bureaucratic timelines. They'd arrest a driver. maybe a warehouse manager. The cartel would lose a shipment, absorb the loss, and rotate to a new corridor within a week. He'd seen it happen, over and over. In the court documents he'd spent 6 months reading. You don't cut a weed by trimming the leaves. You pull the root. Daniel needed more. He needed the financial architecture, the money that turned product into empire. He went deeper. Asset forfeiture records were public. So were certain federal court exhibits. So were the financial disclosures tied to civil RICO cases. Cases where the government had already won, where the evidence was in the public record, just scattered across hundreds of filings in dozens of jurisdictions. Daniel spent 4 months pulling them together, matching names across cases, tracking shell company registrations through state business filings, all public, across Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and California. He built a network map on his living room wall, printed nodes connected by red string. His students would have recognized it immediately. It was a graph theory problem, a network with nodes, edges, and centrality scores. And when he calculated the centrality, the nodes the entire network depended on most, 3 names surfaced. 3 names that appeared in no DEA indictment, no FBI case file, no federal court record. 3 names that were clean. That was the root. June 2012, Albuquerque DEA field office. Daniel walked into the DEA's Albuquerque field office on a Tuesday morning, carrying a 3-ring binder, a USB drive, and a nervous system running on 4 hours of sleep and bad coffee. He asked to speak to someone about a pattern he'd identified in public seizure data. The receptionist asked if he had an appointment. He did not. He waited 2 hours. A junior analyst named Carla Mendez eventually came out, expecting a conspiracy theorist with a printout about chemtrails and government helicopters. What she found instead made her sit down very slowly. Daniel's binder contained 22 months of normalized seizure data, a predictive rotation model with an 84% documented accuracy rate across 6 tested windows, a shell company network map linking 31 entities across 5 states to 3 central holding structures, and a 14-page written analysis formatted like an academic paper, because that's the only way Daniel knew how to write. Mendez read the first 3 pages without looking up. "Who are you?" she finally said. "I teach AP statistics at Roosevelt High," Daniel said. Period 3 and period 5. She made a call, then another. By 4 p.m., Daniel was in a conference room with 2 senior DEA analysts and a federal prosecutor named Harlan Riggs, who had been building a Vasquez case for 3 years, with half the evidence Daniel had assembled in his kitchen. Riggs looked at Daniel's network map for a long time. "How did you get this?" he said. "Public records," Daniel said. "All of it. I just read them." The room was quiet. "All of it?" Riggs repeated. "Every document in this binder is cited with its public source," Daniel said. "I can show you." Riggs looked at Mendez. Mendez looked at the binder. "He's right," she said quietly. July 2012 to January 2014. What followed was 18 months of the most unusual federal investigation the DEA's Albuquerque office had ever run. Daniel didn't become an agent. He wasn't deputized, armed, or given a badge. What he was given was a secure email address, an NDA thicker than his AP calculus textbook, and an analyst's access to non-classified DEA data he could cross-reference against his model. He kept teaching. Period 3 and period 5. Graded papers on weekends. Ran the model on weeknights. Carla Mendez became his handler, a word she hated and used anyway. She fed him sanitized data streams. He returned predictions. His rotation model, now fed real-time seizure data instead of public filings, sharpened to 91% accuracy. More importantly, the financial network map grew. The 3 clean names, the root nodes, turned out to be a retired Guadalajara real estate developer named Armando Peña Cruz, his son-in-law, who ran a logistics company with depots in 4 U.S. border states, and a naturalized American citizen named Gloria Restrepo, who managed a chain of currency exchange kiosks across the Southwest. Restrepo was the one who mattered most. Her kiosks were moving cartel money through microtransactions. Hundreds of small exchanges, individually below reporting thresholds, collectively laundering $30 to $40 million a month. Clean money flowing into Peña Cruz's real estate developments. Clean property converted to collateral for legitimate loans. Legitimate loans funding the next shipment. It was a closed loop, invisible from any single vantage point, but not from Daniel's wall. Riggs built his warrants around Daniel's map, carefully, methodically, making sure every piece of evidence had a legally clean origin. Daniel's public record analysis gave them probable cause that led to subpoenas, that led to financial records, that led to wiretaps. By October 2013, the DEA had enough. On March 4, 2014, the same night El Contador was reading his spreadsheet in a shaking convoy, simultaneous raids hit 14 locations across 3 countries. Armando Peña Cruz was arrested at his Guadalajara home at 3:17 a.m. His son-in-law was taken from a logistics depot outside El Paso at the same moment. Gloria Restrepo was arrested in the parking lot of her Albuquerque flagship kiosk at 3:19 a.m. 47 additional arrests followed in the next 72 hours. $340 million in assets seized. 14 shell companies dissolved. A distribution network serving 11 U.S. states dismantled in a single night. The Vasquez cartel's financial infrastructure, the part that made it a $2 billion empire instead of a street gang, ceased to exist by dawn. March 2014, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Daniel Ortega taught Period 3 the morning after the raids. His students noticed nothing different. He handed back a quiz on probability distributions. He wrote a theorem on the whiteboard. He drank bad coffee from a thermos. 3 weeks later, a federal prosecutor stood in a Tucson courtroom and described the analytical breakthrough that cracked the Vasquez network. He did not name Daniel Ortega. At Daniel's request, his identity was sealed under a cooperation agreement. Harlan Riggs told a reporter that the investigation succeeded because of an extraordinary piece of civilian pattern analysis. He gave no further details. There was no press conference for Daniel, no medal, no segment on the evening news. He got a letter from the DEA, signed by the regional director, that he keeps in a drawer beneath some old exam papers. He still teaches at Roosevelt High, Period 3 and Period 5. His brother Marco's photo sits on the corner of his desk, next to a coffee-stained copy of his AP statistics textbook.